On the surface, Chris Watts had everything a man could want. A modest suburban home in Frederick, Colorado, complete with neatly trimmed lawns, a white picket fence, and the bright colors of children's toys scattered across the yard. Inside, the house buzzed with energy, or at least it had. Chris's wife, Shanann, was vibrant and cheerful, with a smile that could light up a room. Their daughters, Bella and Celeste, were the picture of innocence and joy, laughter spilling from their bedrooms into the hallways. Neighbors often remarked on how perfect the family seemed. Friends praised Chris's charm, his work ethic, and the way he seemed devoted to his family. On social media, the image was flawless: birthday parties, vacations, milestones captured in carefully curated photos that broadcast happiness to the world. But behind closed doors, the illusion was starting to crack. Chris had grown up in North Carolina, a boy raised with ambition and a hunger for more than ordinary life. Moving to Colorado as an adult, he found the oil industry offered opportunity and prestige. At first, everything seemed to fall into place: his career advancing, a wife who supported him, children who depended on him. Yet beneath his charming exterior, a restlessness had taken root. Even in mundane moments, tension simmered. At breakfast, Chris would sip his coffee silently, staring out the window, his mind elsewhere. When Shanann asked simple questions about his day, his responses were clipped, polite but distant. At night, while Bella and Celeste giggled over bedtime stories, Chris would retreat to the garage or the bedroom, lost in thoughts he did not share. Small fissures began to form in the house that had once echoed with laughter. He was a man of contradictions, capable of warmth and charm, yet harboring secret dissatisfaction. Friends and colleagues only saw one side, the polished, likable Chris, but his private life was already diverging from the image he projected. And though no one could see it yet, the seeds of tragedy had been planted. By 2018, the cracks had grown. Chris had begun an affair with a coworker, Nicole Kessinger, whose presence filled a void he could not acknowledge. The excitement, the thrill of desire, became an addiction, offering escape from a domestic life that increasingly felt like a cage. Shanann began noticing subtle changes. Chris was irritable, distracted, and distant. When she confronted him, his excuses were plausible: stress at work, fatigue, minor frustrations, but the warmth in his eyes no longer reached her heart. The children noticed too. Bella would ask, "Why is Daddy so quiet?" Celeste tugged at his sleeve, wondering why the smiles were missing. Chris's inner conflict intensified. Each interaction with Shanann brought guilt and frustration. Each conversation with Nicole offered relief and danger. He began weaving lies to cover the distance between his public and private life. Text messages were crafted, schedules adjusted, and explanations rehearsed. He maintained appearances, attending playdates, posting family photos online, smiling for neighbors. But each day, the tension inside him grew, a storm gathering force beneath the calm suburban surface. Even his thoughts betrayed him. Late at night, he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, weighing his options. The family he claimed to love felt suffocating. His affair felt liberating. But reality and desire were colliding, and he knew he could not keep both worlds intact. August 13, 2018, began like any other summer morning in Frederick, Colorado. The sky was a pale blue, dotted with soft clouds drifting lazily, and the sun's rays spilled gently into the Watts home. Birds chirped in the yard, and a faint breeze rustled the trees lining the street. Inside, the house carried the familiar sounds of life: footsteps, laughter, and the occasional squeal of excitement from Bella and Celeste as they played with toys strewn across the living room floor. Shanann returned from an early business trip, bags in hand, her energy bright despite the long drive. "Good morning, girls," she called, her voice cheery. Bella ran into her arms while Celeste clung to her legs, giggling. The day was ordinary, routine, yet it carried the invisible weight of tension lingering in the home. Chris was already awake. He had been pacing in the garage, drinking coffee, lost in thought. His mind churned with a mixture of guilt, fear, and a cold, unrelenting calculation. This morning was the one he had been dreading, yet he could not stop himself. The inner conflict twisted inside him, one part of him aware of the horror he was about to commit, another part consumed with the desire to escape the life he had created. He came into the kitchen quietly, pretending to stretch and yawn. "Morning," he said, his voice casual, practiced. "Good morning," Shanann replied, setting her bags down. She had noticed the tension in his eyes but dismissed it as stress. "Did you sleep well?" "Yeah, just a little tired," he muttered, sipping his coffee. He watched the girls play, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The morning unfolded with deceptive normalcy. Breakfast was prepared, school lunches packed, and the girls chattered about plans for the day. To anyone looking, it seemed like a family going through the motions of a normal morning. But Chris's mind was elsewhere. Every small sound, the laughter of his daughters, the hum of the refrigerator, the scraping of a pan, felt amplified, oppressive. Each noise seemed to remind him of what he was about to do. Shanann, sensing something off, tried to reach him. "Chris, is everything okay? You're quiet this morning." "I'm fine," he said sharply, glancing away. There was a tightness in his jaw, a tension in his shoulders. His thoughts spiraled, rehearsing what he needed to do, imagining scenarios, calculating the steps to ensure no one could stop him. He hated himself in that moment, hated the man he was becoming, yet a part of him felt a twisted relief at the thought of ending the impossibility of his double life. The confrontation escalated quickly, almost imperceptibly at first. Shanann tried to coax him, reasoning, pleading, her voice wavering with worry. "Chris, talk to me. We can figure this out together. I love you." For a moment, he froze, staring at her, the guilt like a vice tightening around his chest. But then a cold resolve took over. "I can't," he whispered, more to himself than to her. The words hung in the kitchen air, heavy and ominous. What happened next unfolded with horrifying efficiency. The arguments, the pleading, the fear, all collided in a sequence too swift and brutal to fully grasp. Shanann, Bella, and Celeste became victims of a calculated, violent act, extinguishing the laughter and light in the home. Chris executed his plan with a chilling detachment, hiding the bodies, concealing evidence, and attempting to maintain a facade of normalcy as if nothing had changed. Afterward, he cleaned, rearranged, and staged. Social media posts were scheduled, text messages sent, and interactions choreographed to preserve the illusion of a family going about life. "Everything is fine," he told friends and neighbors, mimicking concern, while inside, the weight of his actions pressed down, yet curiosity and fear of exposure consumed him. Outside, the day continued as usual. Birds sang, cars drove past, neighbors went about their lives. Yet inside the Watts home, silence reigned, a silence more horrifying than any noise, a silence that would reverberate across the nation. The house, once full of warmth and laughter, now held a darkness so profound that it could not be ignored, a darkness that marked the beginning of a tragedy no one could have imagined. The moment Shanann and the girls failed to return home, concern spread quickly. Friends called, texts went unanswered, and neighbors began to notice the unusual quiet of the Watts house. By mid-morning, police were alerted. What began as a missing persons report soon became a case that would grip a nation. From the start, Chris's behavior drew scrutiny. His statements were calm, cooperative, yet slightly off. Investigators noted inconsistencies. He claimed to have been at work, yet his timeline conflicted with phone records. He insisted he had last seen Shanann and the girls in the evening, but GPS data suggested otherwise. Detectives began to piece together a puzzle that Chris had tried desperately to obscure. Officers canvassed the neighborhood, speaking to friends, family, and co-workers. One neighbor recalled seeing Chris outside in the early hours, pacing near his car. Another remembered the girls playing on the porch the previous evening, carefree and laughing, completely unaware that their lives were in danger. Each small observation became a critical piece of the emerging picture. Forensic teams arrived at the house, meticulously examining every corner. No detail was too minor: a misplaced toy, a smudge on a countertop, a coffee mug slightly out of place. Evidence began to mount. Surveillance footage showed Chris leaving and returning at times that contradicted his statements. Text messages sent from his phone revealed subtle but suspicious patterns, replies carefully timed, wording that seemed rehearsed. Media attention escalated quickly. National news outlets broadcast the story, showing smiling family photos now forever tainted by mystery and fear. The public was captivated and horrified. Experts on television speculated on motive, psychology, and potential outcomes, while social media exploded with theories and condolences. The image of the perfect suburban family had been shattered, replaced with suspicion and dread. Chris, meanwhile, continued to perform the role of concerned husband. He spoke to reporters, cooperated with interviews, and posted carefully curated messages online. To the outside world, he appeared composed, rational, and worried. Yet beneath the surface, pressure mounted. Every lie, every fabricated explanation, became harder to maintain. Detectives could sense tension in his voice, hesitation in his answers. The weight of the truth pressed in on him like a tide slowly eroding the shoreline. By the end of the week, investigators were closing in. Forensic evidence, witness statements, and digital records began converging into a single narrative, one that pointed toward a terrifying reality: the man claiming to love Shanann and their daughters was, in fact, hiding the unthinkable. The investigation had begun to peel away layers of deception, exposing the dark reality beneath the suburban veneer. The community watched in disbelief as each new revelation surfaced. The Watts case became more than a missing persons investigation; it became a national obsession, a story of betrayal, secrecy, and violence that forced everyone to confront the frightening possibility that evil can exist behind the most ordinary of facades. As the investigation closed in, Chris Watts' carefully constructed facade began to crumble. The pressure from police, the weight of mounting evidence, and the realization that the truth could no longer be hidden forced him into a confrontation with reality. In a chilling confession, he admitted to the murders of Shanann, Bella, and Celeste. The nation recoiled in horror. A man who had seemed ordinary, even loving, was now revealed as a perpetrator of unimaginable violence. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was tense and suffocating. Friends, neighbors, and family members filled the seats, their faces etched with grief and disbelief. Cameras lined the back, capturing every expression, every tremor, every tear. Prosecutors presented a detailed timeline of events, showing not only the premeditation but the methodical steps Chris had taken to cover up his actions. Each piece of evidence, text messages, GPS records, forensic findings, was laid bare, a damning record of intent and deception. Witnesses took the stand to recount the man they thought they knew. Colleagues described Chris as dependable, charming, and polite, while friends spoke of his warmth and apparent devotion to his family. Shanann's family shared intimate stories of her energy, optimism, and dedication to her children. Each testimony created a stark contrast between the loving family they remembered and the horrific reality that Chris had created. Chris himself appeared detached at first, his expression blank, almost rehearsed. When asked to speak, his voice was calm, eerily composed, yet tinged with guilt he could not fully suppress. He admitted the sequence of events, detailing his actions with a precision that was both horrifying and clinical. He explained, in minimal words, the inner turmoil that had led him to commit the unthinkable, though his explanations offered no solace. The courtroom reacted with shock, anger, and tears, as the human tragedy behind the crime became painfully clear. The judge's presence was commanding, the gavel a reminder of the weight of justice. Chris pled guilty to multiple counts of murder, thereby avoiding a drawn-out jury trial. Life sentences without the possibility of parole were swiftly handed down. The decision brought a measure of legal closure, though the emotional wounds for the family, friends, and community would never fully heal. Even after sentencing, questions lingered in the public consciousness. How could a man with such a seemingly perfect life commit such atrocities? What were the psychological triggers, the warning signs, the failures of awareness that allowed the crime to occur? Experts debated motives and personality traits, analyzing Chris Watts' behavior for insights into deception, ambition, and human darkness. The case left a lasting imprint on national consciousness. Chris Watts' name became synonymous with betrayal, deceit, and family horror. The story prompted reflection on trust, relationships, and the hidden complexities of human behavior. For Shanann, Bella, and Celeste, justice had been served legally, but the emotional and societal scars of the tragedy endured, a reminder that evil can sometimes lurk behind ordinary faces. The Watts family tragedy left a permanent mark on Colorado and the nation. Memorials and tributes honored Shanann, Bella, and Celeste, celebrating their lives, laughter, and dreams. Foundations and charities emerged, advocating for child safety and awareness of domestic violence. The house that once symbolized family life became a place of solemn reflection, a reminder of lives lost too soon. Chris Watts remains incarcerated, a figure of infamy. The case continues to be studied in psychology, criminology, and media discussions as an example of hidden darkness behind ordinary facades. It serves as a warning of the consequences of secrecy, deception, and unaddressed inner conflict. The story invites reflection on relationships, trust, and the fragility of life. Shanann and her daughters are remembered not for how they died, but for who they were, joyful, loving, and vibrant. Chris Watts' actions destroyed a family, but the memory of those lives endures. Society continues to grapple with questions of morality, evil, and the unpredictability of human nature, leaving a legacy of both sorrow and caution. If you love chilling true crime stories like this, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this channel.